within the education sector given these proposals. Honorable Speaker, I want to seek your guidance that this matter be handled by the House so that people do not change the Constitution and the Acts of Parliament through the back door.
Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi has called for necessary electoral laws and early reconstitution of the IEBC that will contribute to having a flawless election in 2027. Speaking in Nakuru, Mudavadi said that the absence of a properly constituted commission poses a huge risk to the country's democracy. Wiper leader Kalonzo Musyoka on his part insisted that the country requires a constitutional transformation that will promote a seamless electoral management process.
That discussions on the electoral law reforms should begin immediately and that enactment of necessary electoral laws be done at least 12 months before the 2027 elections.
The reconstitution of IEBC is a matter of grave national interest and we should approach it as such. Election campaign financing, another area under consideration at this forum, is equally of great concern.
And IPOA has revealed that 57 Kenyans died during the anti-government protest, with 30 of them being from Kisumu. Appearing before the National Dialogue Committee, Commissioner Doreen Muthaura said that the authority had received 200 complaints relating to police misconduct.
If the authority can be offered or issued with this prosecutorial power, the authority will be able to fast track its investigations, not necessarily to punish police officers, but to ensure that the process of investigation and prosecution of the cases is also fast tracked, whether to exonerate or justice to be done in whichever manner. We request that this would fast track and go a long way.
NCIC chairperson Samuel Kobi on his part called on the government to address unemployment, which had led to several youths owning guns.
The nature and even the quality of the violence that these gangs are doing is now beyond what is traditionally seen as the problem of youth. We realized that if we look at this, then youth unemployment is a time bomb, which, if not addressed adequately, will clearly lead to this country exploding.
Now, the power blackout that was experienced last month was due to a fault in 5 transformers in Turkana Power Station in Laisamis area, Marsabit County. Before the Senate Committee on Power in Turkana County, CS Davis Cheshire also made it clear about the government paying 7 billion shillings in compensation for the Lake Turkana Power Project following the failure of Ketrako to connect electricity from Suswa on time.
With 5 towers which went down between Kejabe and Mount Longonot, we have investigated and we are looking at the report on how they came down. Was it poor workmanship on the base? Although Lake Turkana was entitled to 127, the government of Kenya could not pay the full amount and requested for a payment structure with Lake Turkana that was mutually beneficial.
The senators who in the county to identify the challenges faced by the residents asked CS Churchill to explain why some areas of Turkana do not have electricity, even though Turkana produces a huge chunk of electricity for the country.
There is a village called Lorokon. Lorokon is just 500 meters from Takwel hydroelectric power. In Mandera, Wajir, and Turkana and Samburu, while we have this facility just next to our doorstep.
Hapa kuna shida ya stima sana hapa Turkana County. Ukitoka kazini, ukifika nyumbani, unapata giza.
It should be noted that the countrywide power blackout last month caused losses of millions of shillings in various sectors, with the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport suffering as well during that ordeal. This is Newsline. I'm Dennis Aseto. Good morning.
The following takes place from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. every weekday on Spice FM.
It's critical that people pay taxes, but then taxation has to have a limit. When you start overtaxing people beyond certain limit, then this is now we call robbery with violence.
We are all struggling, but we don't show. If you're not doing well, shame on you. But you have to say, I'm broke and I'm struggling. We are not okay until everybody is okay.
We are pretending to have political parties. Why don't we just be honest? And we say, these are the Luyas, these are the Kambas, these are the Kikuyus, and we find ourselves in Kenya.
You know, with politics and leadership, no matter what you do, there will always be a complaint. There will always be the assumption that you're either stealing or you're not doing things right. As a leader, don't fear. If you know you're doing the right thing, you've thought about it, you've got an expert advice, do it, then understand later.
This country, we don't need prayers. Prayers is between you and God. Good governance and thinkers who care about the country.
Congratulations. You've seen the hand of the Lord.
Thank you very much. I've earned another title today, this morning at Spice FM. Mama Justice, I don't mind it.
Joel in Kericho.
Salama sana Heri, habari ya asubuhi.
Salama bwana, mambo namna gani?
Salama kabisa bro.
Mambo ya Inamoi kuliendaje?
Mambo ya Inamoi, vile nilikwambia ndugu yangu, alienda asubuhi na ile gari ya kwanza.
I must have missed it.
So did I.
Even if somebody wants to render you irrelevant, there is still work you can do.
Okay, sawa.
I deserve to keep you accountable. You deserve to give me a report. You don't work for me. No, I don't work for you. You work for me.
Do you like that Freudian slip? Lovely, isn't it? Thank you very much.
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
Good morning and welcome to Thursday. We're getting into the last day of the day before the last day of the week, and that's where we are today. Looking at what's happening on our roads this morning, looking at the Thika Superhighway, a little bit of traffic as you're getting out towards the CBD. Nothing too painful right about now, and it looks like most roads today will not have an issue. Well, at least not this time. It's busy coming off Cabanas, going towards North Airport Road, out towards the Eastern Bypass, and we'll see some movement right around Uhuru Highway. But it's still slim pickings. So just getting into it. Let's see what Thursday has to offer. Help us keep things moving and talk to us on Spice FM KE on X.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Welcome. Good morning. It's the 28th of September, and here we are at Thursday. What do we normally say? The end of the week is here.
Yeah, it's beckoning.
It's beckoning?
Yes, it is.
Voila.
By the time you get to Thursday, the day just before Friday, Friday is here.
Don't worry, CT.
You know, the day has to be heralded. You must be told. You must be informed. That day you're talking about, it's here.
It's here with us.
Yes, it is.
Uko salama lakini?
Kabisa.
How was your Wednesday?
Wednesday was good.
I don't have a song today.
Don't worry.
I don't know. There was no song that really stuck in my head.
The day for the song will come. If I were you, I wouldn't worry too much.
I would have loved to sing for you, CT.
Don't worry.
Sing for everybody.
It will come. And if it comes across the program, feel free and sing.
And just... Ednah, good morning. This Ednah is not serious. Ednah said something to me, making me feel a certain kind of way. Everybody, good morning and welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation. How are you? Thank you so much for joining us. Already we can see folks are trickling in, getting into the conversation for today. Many things happening. Many conversations will we have? Yes, we will. All right, how are we going to start it off this morning at 7 o'clock? We will do what? We will do like that, and we'll be talking with folks from the High Court. It is Justice Thursday, and we'll be having an interesting conversation today. Strengthening adjudication of transnational organized crimes and illicit financial flows. Those have been conversations that have been on our radar for a very long time. Illicit financial flows, transnational crime. So there's a dialogue that's happening next week, and there will be 21 African judges who will be in Nairobi for this dialogue about how now we can start to adjudicate over these cases, over these issues. And so we'll be joined by Honorable Justice Diana Mochache, who is a judge of the High Court, and we'll also be talking to Scott Asfog, who is the resident legal advisor for NRS. We'll look at those details as we come up. All right. Misawa. There's an International Day for everything, and it's the International Day of Awareness on Food Loss and Waste. I have an issue with the wastage of food. Big issue with wastage of food. We'll be talking about that today, and 3 people will join us. Professor Jane Ambuko, who is the professor at the University of Nairobi. We'll talk to Winnie Yegon, who works with the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, and we'll also talk with someone from the World Resource Institute, Dr. Christopher Mutungi. That should be an interesting conversation at 8. And finally, 9 o'clock, finally, an education conversation. Janet Okoh will be in the hot seat, and we'll be talking about matters education, but we're focusing on the new KCSE grading. Ochieng, you've been asking about us having a conversation on education today. Leonie what? Leonie Le Siku.
Leonie Leo.
Leonie Le, maybe that's the song. Leonie Leo. I know, sorry.
There's that, and then there's Leonie Leo. Leo. There's that one.
There's that one too.
There's that one, yes.
All joined. Today, not today. That's also in Pidgin. We say today, not today. Today is that education conversation. We'll be having that at 9 o'clock, and we'll look into details of what exactly is going on. Members of Parliament are questioning the report of the Presidential Working Party on education reforms, and there's some things that it would appear as though they have rejected. All of that in that conversation at 9. All right, folks, thank you so much for joining us this morning, and we're getting into those conversations today. Okoh, CT Muga with you on Kenya's biggest conversation in the Situation Room. Eric is still on leave. Before you ask me, he's still on leave. Remember, 2 weeks. 2 weeks now ends next week, but it's okay. He's here in spirit, and the conversations go on. Let's take a break and take a look at weather, and then we'll come back and say hello to you. Log in. We'll talk soon.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
If a lion shows you its teeth, it doesn't mean it likes you.
It doesn't mean it likes you. It won't start. A liar calls as witness one who is either dead or far away. Say it in Kiswahili.
Below nin inte yenin there ayu markati kadikta. You know this character called a liar. He has disturbed people. So when you tell him who are your witnesses, he will take you to a place where it is difficult to verify.
For someone like me who sweats a lot, I cannot survive there. Sweating is biblical. Good. And he must blame it on Adam, not me. Because Adam messed up and he was told, now you fellow you, by the sweat of your brow, thou shalt eat.
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
All right, we're looking at 17 and cloudy conditions in Nairobi, highs of 27 and lows of 15 today. Looking into a mostly clear Nakuru, highs of 25 and lows of 13. It's cloudy at 16 in Nyeri with highs of 25. We'll see lows of 16. Clear conditions at 12 in Eldoret, highs of 24, coming back down to lows of 12. We're looking at 25 in Mombasa, highs of 30, and we'll see highs of 30 as well in Malindi, where it's partly cloudy at 25. 19 and clear in Kisumu, highs of 30. And we'll see highs of 29 in a clear Kakamega at 16. 19 and mostly clear in Kampala, highs of 27. And Dar es Salaam is mostly clear at 23, going to highs of 30 and lows of 23. It's 7 degrees and mostly cloudy in Johannesburg, highs of 21. And at 27, Lagos is clear this morning, highs of 31 and lows of 26. Kinshasa is mostly cloudy at 23, with highs of 35 today. 22 and mostly sunny out in Beijing Thursday afternoon, highs of 26. And we'll see highs of 23 in a mostly cloudy cloudy. Paris at 18. It's 15 and partly cloudy. 16 rather, and partly cloudy in London, highs of 19 and lows of 16. 15 and mostly cloudy in New York on Wednesday night, coming into Thursday, highs of 18 and lows of 12.
.0 Spice FM, Nakuru. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right.
I can see you trickling in. Don Sabwa says it's a TBT Thursday. Do we need another song just like the one? CT, do you know spots in Malawi is Mawanga, and spot on is Osanjimbaliwida. Hey, but do not forget the pa. So spot on. Well, that was a tongue twister this morning. You need another song? We'll think of the song. When the song comes, don't worry. We shall just burst into it and go with it. Sawa sawa. All right. Zeke says good morning. Wonderful people. Happy Thursday to all. Also tuning in is Ricardo Mariera, says good morning, Kings and Queens. Kitengela Eco Locked, Kajiado County is where James Mukabana is this morning, and says good morning. Sitian Ndu, good morning from Kasulu in Tanzania. Brian Otieno says, Don, we need a recap of the language you're teaching us moving to from last week. I know, right? There's so many words that we've learnt and then unfortunately forgotten. All right. Mr. Valley says, investigate murder and prosecute those who killed citizens. It's that easy. What were you answering to? That would be interesting to know. Agri Momanye says, you've heard MPs yap that the education policy shouldn't be implemented before it goes through Parliament and wondered if they'll make any changes. Well, yeah, it's interesting to see if they will actually make, it will be interesting to see if they'll actually make any changes. Shafi Haj says, good morning, tuned in from Roiro. James is tuned in from Kerarapon. Kapenguria is where John Plapan is this morning. Tuned in from Nairobi. Nice to be back home. Thanks so much, Vesh Musanga. It's been a minute. Thanks for joining us this morning. Robertson Bogo is here. Chris Misoy also is watching from Malindi. Sir George Gashoyedi has special greetings this morning, and they're specifically for one Ednah Ombaso. Umepokea? Well done. All right, Ruth Muga says good morning. Pokea salamu za asubuhi kutoka Kiambu. Thank you very much. Jimmy Wekesa says good morning. The 2000. Good morning, CT and Ndu. Thursday is here, the day the Lord made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. Somebody in the back say amen. Amen. There you go. Peter Kavoy says good morning, CT and Ndu. Climate change is undeniably real. It is, as evidenced by the fact that the Nairobi ASK show occurs even when schools are in session. Okay, connect the dots for me, my man. I'm not quite sure what we do with that, but all right. Evans Ntabo says good morning. Libby says good morning, CT and Ndu. Leshan Sancha tuned in from Kisumu. And okay. Pierce Rock says we missed a man in the chair. I know, so do we. Desmond says good morning. Gotea Ednah. Ednah, now when you say Gotea, now when somebody has been Gotea, you say Ame Gotewa. Is that what you say?
That's what you say.
Bas. Ednah me Gotewa kwa hewa. Amegoteka. Sawa, Amegoteka. John Macau says good morning, and good morning following in from München this morning. And we say in Bavaria, Mwalimu, this is for you. Where tortist ist lange tot. This now, who is dead for long. That's in German, I guess. You guys, it's such a trip having you guys joining in every morning. We don't take that for granted at all. Karibuni sana to Kenya's biggest conversation. There's a proverb from Kenya, and CT's got it.
There is a proverb, and it's from Kenya, and I do have it.
You do got it?
Yes, I do have it. How easy it is to defeat people who don't kindle the fire for themselves. Right. How easy it is to defeat people who don't kindle the fire for themselves.
Oh, wow. Okay, I'm going to go out on a limb here for what it means to me. if you can't take care of or at least ring fence your own resources, then it would be easy for somebody to take them over. Abi? Makes sense to me. That's how I would see it. Take care of the one that you have, you know, keep it burning. Somebody can come and snuff it out easily if you're not able to take care of it.
And if you can't take care of it, and it's obvious you cannot. You see, the thing about a fire, you can't actually hide it. It'll be seen. Right? Now, if you can't sort that out, something which Kenyans will tell you is an obviousity, okay, then what you've done is open the door for someone to say, why don't I fill this gap and get this thing done for you?
For you. Let me do it for you. C'est très intéressant. Wait. Okay, so that's it. Getting into the morning. Let's take a look at what's happening in the headlines. It's an interesting day, as it always is. All right. Afcon is a big football tournament. It happens every 2 years on the African continent. Hi, Ednah. You know me, I can just stop and even say hello to you, just, you know, randomly like that.
So that you can...
Because I like you. I can take this one. I can also take this one. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Delightful woman you are. Right. Girl, she's bouncing. Afcon takes place every 2 years. So what it is that's the African Championships of football, essentially, right? And so real hard work is up for grabs for the region, because in its bid in what was called Pamoja, Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda put forward a bid to host Afcon come 2027, and voila, it's going to happen, because CAN, which is the body that organizes the Afcon, has given a nod and said, UK, no problem, you 3 countries, you want to host it, go ahead. Now, on the face of it, it looks fantastic, but you know what? Preparation now has to start now, because you can't have this business of January, or rather, because usually the tournament is in January, February every year. So you will not have a situation where come 2026 December, you're saying, wait, we have not finished. That's the headline on the Standard today. Real hard work begins for Afcon 2027. Kenya, Uganda and Tanzania's joint bid to host the Africa Cup of Nations in 2027 was yesterday accepted. The heavy lifting starts with refurbishment of stadia, serious investment in training grounds and talent injection in teams. There's a quote from Ababu Namamwamba, the sports CS, and he says, as East Africans, we are one. A single passport, we speak one language, that's Kiswahili, we have a common agenda, and hosting this tournament is such a big shot in the arm for integration. I agree. Let's do the hard work so that make sure that it is one to remember. All right, it seems that there's a blow to Ruto. We're going to call it a blow, as MPs question the education report. MPs have some questions. There's some things they're deeming illegal and they're having to ask. And I wonder who's going to answer these difficult questions. Look at the details of that. We're also having an education conversation at 9 o'clock. So this is going to come in as well. All right. Just when you thought the price of everything had gone up, it had not, because cement prices also go up. This is going to affect very many things in the construction industry, etc., and the end user will have to stomach the rise. Click ban. Dicey nature of bar photos. It becomes an analysis and a discussion in terms of what is going to happen. DP struggles to fit in Ruto's former shoes. Why would you want to do that as opposed to putting on your own shoes? But that's okay. Let's look at all the headlines. On the front page of The Nation, it's coming home. Maybe that's the song. To the place where it belongs. Maybe that's the song. And that's the headline on The Nation. Football extravaganza. Kenya, Uganda and Tanzania's joint bid to host the 2027 Africa Cup of Nations was yesterday given the green light by the Confederation of African Football, signalling the continental body's confidence in the 3 countries' capability to hold the tournament, the first in the region since 1976 in Ethiopia. But if the hard work doesn't start now, we may lose out once again. All right. Modhama, Ndemo and 1 billion shillings play a game of merry-go-round. This time it's fraud and it's in Konza. And folks are asking, what? 1 billion? These 2 individuals? Konza?
How?
Why? How? You know?
Which
one? Isn't it fun? We'll give you the details as we go on. And on the back page of The Nation, tea farmers set to receive bonus from next month. Yes. NHIF staff have 1 year grace period to reapply for jobs. Okay, so that's what it's looking like. It's an interesting one. We'll look at the meat as we go along. City, tell us what you got.
Well, top right-hand corner in teal green, social health bill. More pain for workers as state mulls fresh slew of taxes. This is the story on page 2. Lobbies have called them punitive, unprecedented, and growth stifling. This one, yes. Prepare for higher sugar prices as shortage hits Komesa market. Really? Well, they say a sugar shortage is looming.
Oh, please, for my pleasure. Would you say that again?
A sugar shortage is looming. But I almost went there.
You almost did.
In fact, I almost did. I figured once you say sugar, the other one can't also be sh. It has to be s. So, sugar shortage.
Yes, please. Thank you, please.
Yes. And then, of course, bang in the middle of this paper as well, the Star. There's coming home, biggest continental football bonanza returns to East Africa after 51 years. 51, no less.
Yeah.
What have we been doing in 51 years?
Trying to qualify for the games.
All right, but the headline, as you would expect from a Kenyan paper, Kenya wins big with the 2027 Afcon rights.
Big win.
It's an East African win, for heaven's sake.
Really? Is Kenya not in East Africa?
It is in East Africa.
Yeah, so Kenya has won now.
But they've written it as though Kenya alone. My goodness. Anyway, it will be the 36th edition of the competition and will be hosted by 3 countries for the first time.
Yep.
Okay. Then in the Business Daily, interesting. Cash outside banks, meaning cash available but not inside banks. How do you know this? And it isn't easy. How do you then know? But let's go with the flow and let me just mention the amounts. Hit an all-time high, 273 billion shillings. New July peak attributed to rushed state spending. Disbursement of a cash flow relief to contractors. It never does. It never does. Because if it did, the pending bills wouldn't increase.
No, they wouldn't.
Pending bills always increase. Government releases money. That is, of course, if IFMIS allows them to do so, or whoever it is who manages IFMIS allows IFMIS to do what it's supposed to do. But pending bills are not decreasing. So when you say it offers relief, yeah, maybe some contractors. But by and large, if they are pending bills, it means there are very many contractors who have not received their money. And yet the money has been distributed. The word they use is disbursed, isn't it?
Yeah.
All right.
Like
Procurement
magic.
Watchdog flags fresh Kenya Power meter tender.
That's it?
Okay. Kenya Power issued tender.
Yes.
When you use electricity, there's a gadget that measures electricity you use.
A meter.
It's called meter.
Yes.
So now that tender is being questioned by the procurement watchdog, the public procurement watchdog.
Okay.
Yes, and all they've said simply is they've asked Kenya Power politely to explain why it awarded a new electricity meter supply tender to a firm that failed to totally honor a previous contract 3 years ago. And I'm sure when I tell you the story, Kenya Power said, "Guy, it was 3 years ago." They have since changed. They have seen the light.
That's why.
Yes.
I mean, surely 3 years.
They had a road to Damascus experience.
They understood.
Yeah. And they've rectified.
So why this issue now?
I mean, surely.
Come on.
But anyway, they have questioned NHF staff to get 1 year grace period to reapply for jobs. That one you've said, isn't it? Now, KenGen is slated to pay 2 billion as debt battle continues. This one is a company called a Geothermal Development Corporation.
Yes.
There's like a contract which was botched.
Somehow.
It's the same thing. Pay us.
Okay.
So
Stop this
contract,
nonsense, yeah.
breach contract somewhere.
Pay
we
us
want
our
our money. All right. Banks earn margins of up to 10% in forex transactions. This is the story.
Your favorite people.
These are my number one favoritist people. Okay. Kenyan banks are earning margins of up to 10.5% on foreign currency transactions, benefiting from increased demands on hard currencies. So, are we then to expect that when they declare these huge amounts of money that they always make, that we can expect them to have made more of these huge amounts that they always make?
Of course. That's what's going to happen.
Without a shadow of a doubt.
Indeed.
Right.
Can we look at traffic?
Traffic is a good thing to look at this hour.
Sindo?
Yes.
Okay, let's check what's happening on the roads and then we'll come back and continue looking into the stories and now give you the meat of some of these things. 1 billion here, menene stories happening. Okay, traffic and then we're back.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
This is one of the hottest show that we can ever miss in the morning, and it's a show that really gives a real situation in the Situation Room.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you guys so much. Ndutha, nice meeting you. Even beautiful in person more than in photos. Say that again.
Character is like pregnancy. You cannot hide it. People hiding here and there, but after 2-3 months, 5 months, now you realize, so that is why the attitude that you were showing us, you're pregnant.
It's like what my grandmother would say. You cannot pickpocket a naked man. How's that? It's communal, isn't it?
No comment. The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
Okay, getting into 6:30 and we're looking at now traffic here and there. Actually not too badly this morning. A little bit of it as you're coming off of the Thika Superhighway. It's going to take you through to the Pangani underpass at some point. Going towards Wangari Maathai and Murang'a Road is a dream this morning because it's flowing, it's free, it's not happening in any bumper to bumper kind of situation, at least not yet. Outer Ring looks pretty good. You're going to get onto Uhuru Highway from Mombasa Road past the Nyeri Stadium roundabout and you'll be fine getting into the CBD at Haile Selassie, that junction, no problem. Into the CBD, you're good. Out towards Westlands, Chiromo, all of that. Moving in and outbound traffic is moving this morning. Are you coming off Magadi Road? You're fine for now. Touching on Bomas, out towards Langata Road and coming in from Karen on Gong Road, going in the other direction and then eventually getting into the CBD. It's looking good right around now, folks. We don't know how long it's going to last. You might want to take advantage of it and leave now. If you've reached where you're going, well, kudos to you. If you haven't, you want to leave. Let's see what it's going to look like as we creep into traffic hour this morning. And let's talk in the meantime on Spice FM, KE on X.
Chilled Spice. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM.
Right? 1 billion.
1 B.
Yeah.
That is 9 zeros, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, well done. Then there's Konza City, what is touted to be Kenya's Silicon Valley.
Yes.
You understand?
Savannah, Silicon Savannah.
Thank you. Then there's 2 gentlemen, one Mudhama, one Demo.
Prominent people.
Yes.
Well known.
Now, all of them somehow are mixed into this thing, and we're not quite sure what it is. As President William Ruto's administration plans to pick up the pace on the Konza technopolis, this project, a recent court decision has revealed that Kenya's flagship tech hub is built on a foundation of fraud that was planned and aided by senior government officials. You follow me so far?
I am following you so far.
Thank you.
Thank you.
On July 4th, in a decision that went largely unnoticed, Justice Lawrence Mugambi delivered a stinging indictment of Kenya's criminal justice system as he noted that the fraud scheme's masterminds, based on the evidence presented to him during trial, managed to use the courts to wriggle out of prosecution. I keep telling you that things happening here is like the theater of the absurd, and the actors are just right here for you to see. So you ask, okay, so what exactly does this mean, right? Okay, let me tell you. How big fish got away in a 1 billion shilling Konza heist as 3 were jailed. June 2029, Philip Munyaka, hired workers to till his 7.8 acre land within the Malili Ranch in Konza. In preparation for the planting season. at the property, officers from the National Youth Service assaulted the workers and kicked them out of the property. They informed Mr. Munyaka that the government had acquired this land. Yani, the government has taken the land, so don't even ask questions.
Yes, your land, forget it.
Yeah,
Government has taken it. It's now government land.
Exactly. So, and they also told him this your 7.8 acres falls under the 5,000 acre parcel meant for the Konza technopolis. All right. NYS officers insisted that the money had already been paid, despite Mr. Munyaka not receiving a cent. He said, "But I've not received anything." Say, the money has been paid, so stop bringing complications. You get out. So, on following up with Malindi Ranch bosses on why he was to receive 1.1 million, which was 460,000 shillings short of the actual value, he was rudely turned away by the chairperson. He then went to the Law Society of Kenya President Eric Mutua, who represented Malindi Ranch in the transaction. Mutua allegedly told him that there was a pending court case and that the potential of seeing him, there's a potential, yani, we're in court now. So even this 460 that you're complaining about, it could actually be 16 million. So do what? You relax. I said, okay, no problem. To date, today, September 28th, as we are speaking to you now, he has never been compensated for the property. His case is one of the several detailing the level of fraud that has also seen other taxpayers lose close to 500 million shillings. As President William Ruto's administration picks up the pace to develop Konza City, a recent court decision revealed that it was built on a foundation of fraud, and it was planned and carried out by senior government officials. The ICT ministry had paid 1 billion shillings for the 5,000 acres that the government intends to set up the technopolis. But Munyaka and several others who questioned the valuation and process were not paid. So you can imagine, it's your land. You've just tilled the land. You want to plant. Somebody comes and says, get out, and says, you've been paid, money has been released. Guy said, but I've not been paid. He said, that's not our problem. You do what? Get out.
You go and look for it. Where it was.
You go and look for the money. It's not our problem.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the balance ended up in the pockets of a few senior Malindi Ranch officials. How much? 450 million. So, come the 4th of July 2023, in a decision that went unnoticed, Justice Mugambi convicted 3 directors of Malindi Ranch, David Ndolo, Ngalai, Leonard Kinywa Kitwa, and Julius Mbao Nzuko for aiding the fraud scheme that saw the firm's members lose 553 million shillings. Together with James Mutuku Munguti, they were charged in 2014 for the fraud, but Munguti died while the case was going on. 5 other individuals who were largely who were also charged in court secured court orders barring their prosecution. Why didn't we really pay attention to this is the question. Now, it's coming out now that in his judgment, Mugambi delivered a stinging indictment of Kenya's criminal justice system, as he noted that the fraud scheme's mastermind, based on the evidence presented to him during the trial, managed to use the courts itself to wriggle out of this thing. How, you ask? He was making reference to the 5 individuals, including Kenya's ambassador to Belgium, Bitangen Demo, former Machakos Senator Johnston Modama, former Commissioner of Lands Zablon Mabea, former National Police Service Commission member Leonard Lepao Musengi, and Malindi Ranch Director Julius Mwao Kilonzo. So, it's possible that they could spend the next 2 years in prison for their role in tricking taxpayers into paying this 500 million shillings.
Why only 2 years?
I wonder. For land that was not required or planned for. So a lot of things could be going on now as a result of that ruling in July. Mugambi wrote the judgment after being permitted to do so by Chief Justice Martha Koome, as he had been elevated to the Superior Court. The fine of 5 million for each was imposed by Senior Principal Magistrate Peter Okoh, since Mugambi had been promoted to the High Court during the pendency of the case. The 3 were unable to raise the fine and started facing the jail term. The judge convicted the 3 for conspiracy to defraud, but acquitted them for the offence of stealing this money being sale proceeds of the 5,000 acres. He also acquitted them on the offence of breach of trust, saying they were not public servants. The question is, if you are aware that there were some other individuals supposed to be strong, they used the court to wriggle out of this, what exactly is going to happen to them?
And what exactly are they saying when they use the court to wriggle out of this? What are they saying? They found loopholes in the law?
Exactly. Loopholes in the law, and that they were able to get out on a technicality. Ministry officials failed to indicate changes in the tender documents to advertise the increase in acreage to alert the public. The ministry's budget records were also not amended to indicate the change. With the 200,000 shillings per acre quoted by Malili Ranch during tender evaluation, the government should have paid 600 million, but the government paid 1 billion. So the question is, where did 460 million shillings go to?
In this case, just ask where the entire amount went.
Yes.
Because if we're already seeing cracks, which are obvious, perhaps this is one of those cases where the Land Acquisition Tribunal could jump in. That is, of course, if the people who have felt defrauded go to the tribunal, because that is the sort of thing that they do, isn't it?
Isn't it? Because you're supposed to actually, from what we've been told, but so now, this is a tribunal that is going to start its work in a few weeks, from what we are told. You can actually go and say, look, it's not that government cannot buy, but we're saying the process by which they've bought this land, number one, is a problem. Number two, we didn't see a cent of this money. Seems like something that would be right up the alley of the Land Acquisition Tribunal.
This is not a new story. When the SGR was weaving its way from Mombasa to Nairobi, there are many people along the way whose land was acquired compulsorily.
That's the word.
And there's always been the small matter of whether they receive the compensation. Every once in a while, a story rears its head about someone who didn't quite get. And according to the books, the person was paid. But the person who was supposedly paid didn't see the money. Yes, this thing of people being paid and they don't see the money. How is it that some individuals know how to do this? Someone has been paid and he doesn't see the money.
So they've not been paid.
Exactly. I mean, in all honesty, how else do you define it? If you don't see the money, then you haven't been paid.
No, you haven't.
Yes. If the money was released, then follow the money and let's see where it went, because it clearly didn't go to the person who's supposed to benefit from it.
And there's a trail. Follow it.
There's always a trail. With money, there's always a trail. Wow.
I know. Go ahead.
Right. I am looking at this story in the Business Daily. Cash circulating outside banks hit an all-time high of 273.4 billion in July, in the wake of rushed government spending at the end of the financial year in June, easing the cash flow pains of contractors, suppliers, and their employees. Really? This happened in this country?
Yeah.
Nah, not that I know of. Data from the Central Bank of Kenya show the cash outside Kenya rose from 257 billion in June to the highest level under President William Ruto's administration and surpassed the previous peak. Previous speak.
Got it.
Okay, of 267.7 billion in July last year. The rise in cash outside the banks coincided with the end of the government's financial year on June 30th, which is usually accompanied by a large ticket disbursement from the exchequer to meet demands. But this one, no. My measure is pending bills, man.
Yeah.
This happened in July, and yet the story of pending bills, according to the Auditor General, has gone up, not down.
Yes, significantly up. Is there a word like that?
Okay, let's look at the story of the procurement of electricity meters. Okay? The Public Procurement Regulatory Authority, PPRA, in a letter to Kenya Power Managing Director Joseph Siror, pointed out that the firm Smart Meters Technology Limited, we've spoken about these guys sometime in the past, okay, had an order to supply 91,000 smart meters by July 24th, 2020, but had not done so as evidenced by a purchase order report. Okay? Question is, were they paid? Smart Meters Technology is among 4 local companies that have been awarded a new, spanking new, shining 4.5 billion tender to deliver. Now this, we moved from 91,000. We're now at 711,740 smart electricity meters, raising questions on the legality of the decisions because the company was yet to fully deliver meters from a previous contract by Kenya Power. Again, were they paid in full for the meters they did not supply?
Good grief.
Yes. Then we're given details of the tender data sheet, the bidders, blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to go on with the story.
You're done.
No, I have said enough. I have heard enough.
Yeah.
Who owns smart meters?
For goodness sake. Yeah, I think, a little bit of pointing in that direction. Who owns it?
And is usually the question, because if you have somebody who owns it, then we'll have to find out what else this person owns, because it's not rocket science. You work with the government, you do not fulfill your obligation, you will be blacklisted. And blacklisting means they cannot give you work again. But here, in this land of Kenya, you are not just given work, you're given more work. Right.
Hiya. Now,
yes,
the Speaker of the National Assembly is who? Once Moses Wetangula. And he yesterday dealt a blow to the Kenya Konza plans to implement a raft of education reforms without parliamentary approval. So the Presidential Working Party went around the country, 6 months, sat, talked about the different things that they were going to do. They came up with a 14-plan reform, and they said this is how we're going to adjust education, and actually started to roll it out. Well, National Assembly got up and said, excuse me, you need a nod for this, and you didn't get the nod, so just put that thing on ice. The Speaker directed Education Cabinet Secretary Ezekiel Machogu to hold off implementation of the Presidential Working Party on education reforms until it is considered and adopted by Parliament. Wetangula's directive came after Emuhaya MP Omboko Milemba complains that the recommendation in the report, which the government is implementing, is unconstitutional. Because you did not come to Parliament, we did not discuss it, and we did not say go ahead. It is not constitutional. So Speaker had no choice but to say, you know what? Leader of the majority, Kimani Ichung'wah, please follow up on the matter and report back to the House via comprehensive statement in a fortnight, meaning 2 weeks. He warned that the legislative powers rest with the August House. In case you thought we are just a merry band of gentlemen, we are not. You bring these things to us. When we approve, then you can go on. Nobody, and I repeat nobody, he said, including a government minister, can purport to make law or do things that appear to be interpreted that they have made the law because they have no capacity. I think he may have been a bit confused there, but in other words, he's saying you must come to us, the lawmakers, in order for this to happen. Article 94 of the Constitution says no person or body. Is there a difference between a person and a body? But okay.
Yes, it must be.
Or a body like corporate.
Corporate body.
Corporate,
yes,
okay.
Yes. Because in law...
Combination of people.
Actually, in law, a corporate body, which is a limited liability company, is considered to be a person.
So in this case, we're not talking about body of person, but body of persons or group.
It's like body of evidence. It isn't all a whole clan bunching up together. No.
Okay.
Yes, it's a collective term.
It's true. So apart. Nobody or person other than Parliament has the power to make provision having the force or law in Kenya except under authority conferred by the Constitution or by legislation. So, he nitpicked at this, but I think he was right. He said, look, we are the ones to do this. Now, Ichung'wah noted that the best Machogu can do is to make a recommendation and then have it tabled in Parliament for consideration. You don't just make recommendations and then go and implement your thing as though we were not here. We are here, Mama, and we are telling them that the only way to do this is to let us go through it. We say yes, and then you can go ahead. So until then, the recommendations of the Working Party will be where? They'll be on the back burner. So thank you very much. 2 weeks we'll hear about where that will all go. So then I wonder what happens to the 2 weeks is still in time. Let's hear. Just next to that, let me share a story.
Just next to that. Next door.
Thank you.
Neighbor.
The suspect in the murder of the hospital manager has been detained for 21 days. We hear that they did actually arrest her yesterday in Kibera. The 16-year-old girl, who is the main suspect in the murder of Nairobi Hospital Finance Director Eric Michael, will be held at Kilimani Police Station for 21 days. This is after the DCI obtained custodial orders to detain her pending the conclusion of the investigation. The girl, who can only identify as AAO as she's still a minor, was arraigned before Senior Resident Magistrate Zainab Abdul at the Milimani Law Court. The investigating officer, Mr. Patrick Boge of Kilimani DCI office, had sought custodial orders to hold the suspect to help with the investigation. Boge argued that the preliminary investigations indicated that the minor was among a group of people who attacked and killed Mr. Michael. Okay, he said that the suspect had been on the run since the crime had been committed and that had been staying at a particular place. Okay. She was in Kibera on Tuesday, although she's said to have been living in the Katwekera area village at the heart of the sprawling informal settlement. Boge said he needed time to take AAO for a mental and age assessment to determine her actual age and whether she is fit to stand trial for murder. So this happened yesterday, and immediately it happened, all sorts of questions were being asked. She's 16, she's a minor. What was she doing in his company? Now they're saying that she's part of a gang. What happened? I'm very interested to hear the details of this investigation, because many questions arise here, and how they will handle this matter. Her name cannot even be mentioned because she's still a minor. They want to assess her age and her mental state and capacity as to whether she'll be able to stand trial. But many questions are jumping out of the woodwork here in terms of what happened. And it is my hope that these investigations will actually be thorough to find out exactly what's happened, and that we don't have a case whereby there's wild conjecture flying around in terms of what could have happened. Yeah?
More pain as workers as state mouths fresh taxes.
There's nothing left to tax.
Oh no. That's what you think.
It's not finished.
In addition to the already operationalized Financial Act 2023, which is still a subject of litigation, the state proposes a 2.7% rise in mandatory NHF deductions through the Social Health Insurance Bill 2023, which is already before the National Assembly. In addition, Ikolomani MP Bernard Shinali has also proposed a new 3% tax dubbed unemployment tax. The employers will be compelled to match the deduction of the employee, just in a similar fashion as the housing tax law. The MP claims that its objective is to develop a fund that would cushion Kenyans who are unemployed. This is utter nonsense.
Okay. Don't say what you think, CT.
No, it is nonsense.
Tell me why.
What are you talking about? Does he know what brings about unemployment? You think if you set up a fund, what exactly are you going to do with this fund in order to cushion people who are unemployed? Instead of looking for solutions and talking about how it is, you can ensure that we probably change the minds of our people, look at our education sector and figure out how do we turn this huge number of people whom we have and who are young into entrepreneurs, people who think in terms of creating jobs for themselves, get them to understand this. Opening up opportunities for would-be employers, industrialists, and people who already have employees to make it easier for their businesses to expand so that they can get more workers. Now, you levy more tax on them, they're going to reduce the workforce, not increase it.
Yes, they will.
Yes.
It's counterintuitive in nature that you're thinking that you can tax people more to be able to get more revenue in. But what happens is that people then reduce or stop completely the activity that would essentially give you these taxes. It seems like it's cut and dry. I mean, it's a no-brainer that you do that, that's what you're going to do. So it is counterintuitive. And I do not know when we're going to get off this horse that you cannot tax people, you cannot tax a citizenry to development. It has never happened anywhere. Neither do we see any plans for anybody saying we're going to do this in order for us to develop.
You're compelling an employer who already has people who are employed to pay money that matches the tax a person is paying. What do you think that person is going to do?
Where are they going to get it from? What do you think is going to happen?
They produce so that they can sell. For them to sell and for them to make money, people need to be able to buy. Already people do not have money.
It's a depressed situation already.
Yes. So now, what you're doing, you ask this person to pay more when they are not getting more because whatever they produce isn't bought in the numbers it was being bought. And then you say this is supposed to cushion what? Kenyans from unemployment. Nonsense. Utter nonsense.
Yeah?
If this is a reporting error, then it's a reporting error. But if it's the truth, it is absolute nonsense. And anyway, the person who wrote this article surely should have questioned what this person is talking about.
Indeed. It's true. I can sense anger, but it's true. It is true. It's true. Okay, so let's look at this Afcon story, shall we? Because it is a big deal.
I want to exacerbate our situation just a little more before we get to that.
Okay.
Okay. Prepare for higher sugar prices as shortage hits Mombasa. Look, let it rain some bad news. I mean, if you started with one, just go on to the next one. A sugar crisis is looming following the acute shortage of commodity.
Acute or acute, sorry.
This is an acute shortage.
I know it.
Not cute shortage. Sorry. In the commodity in the Mombasa market. The shortage is expected to further increase sugar prices in the coming months following the government's ban on sugar cane milling in Western Kenya and the Nyando sugar belt. Okay? Now, if you're talking about counterintuitive measures, it appears that we have members of parliament and then we have government officials who seem to be acquiring a new form of expertise, doing the very thing which will not achieve whatever it is you're saying it's supposed to achieve. But the question has to be asked, to what end? Is it that it's a mistake? Is it that they do not know what they are saying, or they do not fully understand? Or is this just deliberate and they do have a scheme? They do have a plan. They know exactly what they're talking about. And that it's us who are in the dark, and it's us who do not know what is actually going on.
You can only grope in the dark for so long, my friend. At some point, even if the lights don't come on, the sun will shine or something. There will be some kind of light for you to see what's really going on. So even if it is a smoke screen for something better, my friend, the something better at some point has got to crack. It's not a forever situation that you'll be in darkness forever. Even if you don't have any kind of artificial light, the natural light will come through. You get what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So even if you're saying, okay, is there a plan? It's got to come to light at some point, don't you think? Or is it that antibiotic situation where we're saying you're going to feel worse before you actually feel better? Is that it? That Kenyans are meeting a situation whereby, all right, we're going to see a raft of things get significantly worse because you're in a healing process. You're climbing, you're clawing through the hole and getting to the top. It will get better. Is that what we're saying?
You know, every page you turn, there will be a headline which paints a dreary, dark picture of what's happening. Inflation, expensive loans, top concerns for business. I mean, it doesn't matter what you do. Now, in an effort to help people who are unemployed, they're going to ensure that the job market has even less opportunities. That is how people unemployed will be helped. They will be joined by more people who are unemployed. Please read the Afcon story.
Okay, well, you know, football is a great escape, isn't it? Joy and excitement as Pamoja bid finally receives the CAF nod. CAF is the Confederation of African Football. It's Africa's FIFA, essentially. The wait appears headed to an end. The gods of African football have spoken, and the ancestors are patiently waiting, and rain is about to fall. Excitement and pride swept across Africa, Tanzania and Uganda after the East African Community Nations Pamoja bid to host the 2027 Africa Cup of Nations, the Afcon tournament, received consideration, or rather the Confederation of Africa Football green light. Yesterday, CAF approved the bid presented by the three countries to jointly host the continent's premier football showpiece in 4 years' time. Yesterday, the Executive Committee Board of the Confederation of African Football announced the decision in Cairo in Egypt. Senegal, Botswana and Egypt were vying to host the event. The committee also announced Morocco as the host of the 2025 Afcon. CAF President Patrice Motsepe celebrated the news, saying the future of African football looks brighter. He said an African nation will win the World Cup in the future. Okay. CAF President Patrice also said that the East African nations Pamoja bid was a success. The future of African football looks bright. The continent will host the World Cup in the near future. Okay, these futurely things are nice. Now, President William Ruto, while receiving the bid early this year, had said the work of prosecuting our joint bid now begins in earnest, and Kenya intends to make its full contribution to it. Cabinet Secretary Namwamba said is duly seized of his assignment and is mobilizing his teams, liaising with counterparts in Uganda and Tanzania to formulate a winning bid. Now, obviously, the formulation of that bid worked, as CAF has given its nod. The question is, what happens over the next 4 years is going to be critical in the success of this, and it's likely to see that there will be a lot of work being done. It'll be interesting to see who among the three countries does what. Okay, so that's what it looks like for news this hour. And it's just interesting to see how some of these stories are getting in and seeing what they'll come out to be. Voilà, getting into after 7 o'clock, we will be having an interesting conversation. And as we get into it, thanks for joining us. Our live streams, I keep forgetting to remind you, are up. Facebook, on YouTube, Spice FM KE. Let's listen to the news and come back into it. It's 7 o'clock.
Good morning, this is Newsline. I'm Dennis Aseto. The Independent Policing Oversight Authority revealed that 57 Kenyans died during the anti-government protest, with 30 of them being from Kisumu, appearing before the National Dialogue Committee. Commissioner Doreen Muthaura said that the authority had received 200 complaints relating to police misconduct.
If the authority can be offered or issued with this prosecutorial power, the authority will be able to fast track its investigations, not necessarily to punish police officers, but to ensure that the process of investigation and prosecution of the cases is also fast tracked, whether to exonerate or justice to be done in whichever manner. We request that this would fast track and go a long way.
NCIC Chairperson Samuel Kobi in his part called on the government to address unemployment, which had led to several youths being in gangs.
The nature and even the quality of the violence that these gangs are doing is now beyond what is traditionally seen as the problem of youth. We realized that if we look at this, then youth unemployment is a time bomb, which, if not addressed adequately, will clearly lead to this country exploding.
The succession politics in the Rift Valley have taken a new dimension after South Rift leaders asked cabinet secretaries to stop engaging in politics, led by Bomet Governor Professor Hilary Barchoke's Kericho counterpart Dr. Eric Mutai and vocal Emurua Dikir MP Johanna Ngeno. The leaders breathed fire on the CSs from Rift, saying they should stick to their mandates that they were given by President William Ruto. They made the remarks during the launch of road machinery in Bomet Green Stadium. Now, the power blackout that was experienced last month was due to 14.5 transmitters in Turkana Station in Laisamis area of Marsabit before the Senate Committee on Power in Turkana County, CS Davis Chirchir, has also made it clear about the government paying 7 billion shillings in compensation for the Electoral Power project following the failure of the Ketraco company to connect electricity from Suswa on time.
With 5 towers which went down between Kejabe and Mount Longonot, we have investigated and we are looking at the report on how they came down. Was it poor workmanship on the base? Although Lake Turkana was entitled to 127, the government of Kenya could not pay the full amount and requested for a payment structure with Lake Turkana that was mutually beneficial.
The senators were in the county to identify the challenges faced by the residents, asked CS Chirchir to explain why some areas of Turkana did not have electricity, yet Turkana produces a large chunk of electricity for the country.
There is a village called Lorokon. Lorokon is just 500 meters from Takwel hydroelectric power.
In Mandera, Wajir, and Turkana and Samburu, while we have this facility just next to our doorstep.
Hapa kuna shida ya stima sana hapa Turkana County. Ukitoka kazini, ukifika nyumbani, unapata giza.
Njiru, Ruai, Mathare and Kibera are among 436 hotspots identified by Nairobi County as areas prone to flooding ahead of the upcoming El Nino rains. Nairobi's Disaster Management and Coordination Officer Bramwell Smew said the county government is sensitizing the population residing in the mentioned areas. He added that there were also plans to evacuate people from these areas and establish temporary shelters. Now, the High Court has extended the orders barring the Firearms Licensing Board and the AG from demanding Jomo Kenyatta's gun license without following due process. The board had asked the court to dismiss the case filed by Jomo, saying that the application is premature and that it did not impound his license. The case will be heard on the 11th of next month. And Bunyala West MCA Calvins Okonya, who allegedly defiled a 14-year-old girl, will remain in detention for 9 more days as police complete investigations. Busia Court Magistrate Ednah Nyaloti has also ordered police to release the suspect on a cash bail of 2 million shillings. And a minor alleged to have killed Nairobi Hospital Finance Director Eric Maigo by stabbing will remain in police custody for 21 days to allow police complete investigations. The minor, however, told the police she killed Maigo in self-defense as he raped her. The investigation officer will, in those days, record statements from key witnesses, carry out a mental test on the minor, and take DNA samples for analysis. This is Newsline. I'm Dennis Aseto. Good morning.
Spice FM, Nakuru.
All right, where are we at? A few minutes after 7 o'clock, we're looking at traffic. Different parts of the city, it's building up. A little bit different from what it was right about 6 a.m. Now there's traffic building on Uhuru Highway. It's going to take us out towards that Haile Selassie Junction and then into the CBD and then out towards Westlands. That looks pretty busy right about now. Let's look at the Thika Superhighway where traffic has built up significantly, bumper to bumper in many parts, coming off of that Githurai area. Then we're going to get to Outer Ring at the junction, and then it flows a little bit, not too poorly, as people will use the service lanes. Folks are using service lanes until you get to that survey drift, and then you're going to have to go bumper to bumper through towards the city. All right, Moranga Road will offer you some reprieve as you're getting into the CBD, and then you're going to come in at Wangari Maathai. Some of that traffic will go out towards Chiromo, and so that's where you might get stuck. Coming out of Westlands, it's busy as well. Chiromo also busy as you're getting into the CBD, and we're looking at traffic building up United Nations Avenue out towards the junction there and coming through towards Limuru Road. So we're getting into traffic hour. It seems a little bit early today, but let's keep our wits about and see how we can manage this one. Let's talk it out, folks. Talk to us on Spice FM KE on X and try to keep things moving this Thursday.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Second hour of Kenya's biggest conversation this morning. It is Justice Thursday, and here we are having a Justice Thursday conversation into the second hour. And thank you for all our audiences on different platforms tuned into Kenya's biggest conversation this morning. And of course, a special welcome to our audience on KTN Home. Karibuni sana as we continue with this conversation. Our guests are in the hot seat for this hour, and in the persons of Honorable Justice Diana Mochache, who's a judge of the High Court of Kenya. Good morning.
Good morning.
Karibu sana.
Asante.
And also, our guest this hour is Scott Asfag, who is the United States Department of Justice resident legal advisor for Nairobi. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having us on.
Thank you for being here. This is the hot seat of the Situation Room. And it's interesting because today the conversation is quite a hot one. We're looking into issues of transnational organized crimes and illicit financial flows. It already has a foreboding effect when we just say those words. And so we're looking at the effective adjudication of that, and we're talking about that this morning. To welcome you in Situation Room fine form is CT with today's proverb.
Our proverbs for the whole of this week come from the country of Kenya. Now, I mentioned at the beginning of the week that I will not specify which part of the country the proverbs come from. I leave it to our listeners, the audience, to determine if the proverb resonates with any proverbs they have in their neck of the woods. How easy it is to defeat people who don't kindle the fire for themselves. How easy it is to defeat people who don't kindle the fire for themselves.
Justice, maybe we hear from you. What would be your interpretation of that?
Because if someone has not kindled the fire, they don't know the mechanism of lighting that fire. So they may actually have the fire because someone else has done it for them. But because they do not know how to put it off, how to light it, it becomes difficult for them to relight the fire if it is put off by someone else. So unless you work hard, unless you work for something, you wait to be given or trickle down from other people to yourself, then you do not know how to look for it.
CT normally has points that he gives, but let's wait until Scott gives us his interpretation and we see how generous he's feeling today.
It's a difficult riddle.
It's a great question. What I thought of was personal integrity. That if people don't have their own strong sense of morals, strong sense of purpose in life, strong sense of mission, then when others come into their lives and offer alternatives, they're easily moved. And where people do have those strong personal values, they can resist those people who come and offer things that are transient and don't hold up over time. So.
You know, the amazing thing about Proverbs is that your interpretation cannot possibly be wrong because it is your interpretation. We listen to a proverb and we normally speak of it in the manner it resonates with us. And so there will be different supposed interpretations and they're all right. So this is a good week. On a scale of 1 to 10, you both have 11.
Oh, I told you.
Interesting.
The man is feeling generous. Even on a Thursday. It's fantastic.
Only that he did not say that he expected us to react. Would have been more keen.
Oh, wow.
I thought it was for the audience.
You never know. Through the conversation,
yes.
it might rear its head again. So,
yes.
Radar up.
Yes.
Okay, so we're looking at the strengthening the adjudication of transnational crime as well as illicit financial flows. It feels like a mouthful. It feels like there's a lot that's going on, and in terms of these crimes and illicit financial flows, they've almost become kind of buzzwords in our conversation when we talk about justice, when we talk about transnational integration, or when we talk about transnational relationships. Maybe we can start it off with a bit some definitions of what we're looking at when we're talking about transnational crimes. What falls under this? Maybe we can start with you, Justice Mochache.
Yeah, thank you. These are generally crimes that transcend borders, crimes that cross from one country to another. That is why they are transnational. Some of these crimes are smuggling of immigrants, trafficking in humans, especially women and children who are the most vulnerable, trafficking in narcotic drugs. We don't manufacture narcotic drugs, but somehow we get them into this country. Where do they come from? Especially cocaine and heroin. We are looking at trading in wildlife trophies. As much as we have elephants in this country, poachers are killing them, but we don't have use for those ivory. So where are they being taken? It means they're being sold across country. Then terrorism, obviously. Yes, we have been hit in this country by terrorists, and investigations have established that some of those offenders are actually foreigners. So they crossed over from other countries into our country. Corruption as well. How does that terrorist cross over into Kenya? Could someone have turned a blind eye? Those are some of the ones that I can think about right now. Yes, and of course, smuggling of weapons and even parts. They come in small parts and then they are assembled in this country. Yes.
Okay. So the origin, destination, all of this involves several countries at once.
Several countries, yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Scott, when we look at illicit financial flows, what are we talking about here exactly?
So illicit financial flows, given the example that the Honorable Mochache just made, let's talk about terrorism. Terrorism can't exist without the people being involved in it, supporting themselves through financials. So money that flows into and out of terrorist regions really defines the problem. If we can stop the money flowing to those organizations, it cuts off their ability to continue their operations. And that money flows across borders through electronic means mainly. And those illicit flows are something that all of us in law enforcement are looking for ways to stop.
All right. When we also then talk about strengthening the adjudication of over both of these matters, I mean, we look into some of them and examples of such and how we see those playing out. When we talk about the strengthening of the adjudication of this, are we alluding to the fact that perhaps there are gaps through which these crimes continually continue? Transnational organized crime. Do we say that there are holes, there are gaps in the system, and then how can we start to strengthen?
Okay. Yes, there are gaps. One, these crimes are committed clandestinely. There is no person who can go and broadcast himself and say, hey, I'm bringing drugs from South Africa into Kenya. Somehow you find women have been given pellets to swallow. People have removed soles of shoes and stuck drugs. You find logs have been harvested, holes have been dug in, and ivory actually fixed in there. So there's a way of disguising these commodities in order to bring them into this country or from this country to another country. How it happens, it is because criminals are always ahead of law enforcement officers. They are advanced in their thinking. They think ahead of how are we going to evade arrest. That is actually the life of a criminal. He has to think harder. He has to be more innovative. So there are gaps due to the fact that law enforcement officers more often than not react rather than being proactive. And that is why we need to come up with ways of strengthening law enforcement officers, having capacity building for judicial officers as well, and prosecutors, so that adjudication becomes easy. So that when the law enforcement officers mainly rely on intelligence information to arrest the offenders, we would like as judges and magistrates to understand what they go through, because the crime itself is very complex. It is like a yarn, the wool, the way you knit. If you undo it badly, going back to where the origin is very, very complex. Or even look at a spider web. Just try and follow it slowly without destroying it.
To see where it starts.
To see where it started. Or it just talked about a jigsaw puzzle. Trying to piece the puzzle together is very, very tiring, very, very complex, and you require patience and techniques. So that is where we have a little bit of gaps as a region. We are headed there, but then there are those gaps. Hence, this regional organization to think about how Africa generally can come together to try and adjudicate these cases, and obviously try and see how to close the loopholes and the gaps.
If I may ask.
Yes.
Whenever we think of loopholes and we think of crime and criminals,
yes,
is there a body of evidence that indicates that there are jurisdictions where people have managed to actually either reduce or at least bring some of these activities to a bare minimum? And if indeed there are such cases, what did they do to achieve this?
Okay. Yes, we have what we call international best practices. We are looking at, for instance, the US, the UK, they are way ahead of us. And because they have leveraged on technology, and because they also speak to the public, they encourage members of the public, if they see something, they should say something. In this country, people can actually, you can be mugged in the streets and people just pass by and do nothing. But in the US, for instance, members of public are told, if you keep quiet and something happens, then you'll always feel guilty. So I think they're way ahead of us. And then they have trained the investigators and also the equivalent of our national intelligence services collects information. Members of public also share information, and they are very, very sure that their identities may not be disclosed. So in this country, maybe members of public may see but fear to share.
So do I hear you to be saying that the members of the public in a country like the US are themselves at the very forefront of this fight? They are aware and there seems to be mutual trust between them and law enforcement agencies, so
yes,
they are able to work together.
They are able to share information,
Yes.
knowing very well that that information, their identities rather, will not be disclosed. They have also been educated to know, for instance, in a hotel, when a suspicious person is checking in, a receptionist will check him in and quietly make a report about that suspicious person. The banks as well, whenever there's a suspicious transaction, that information is quickly shared among law enforcement officers without disclosing the identity. So I think they're a little bit way ahead of us in terms of technology, in terms of trust in the system as well. So there's a little bit of that trust lacking amongst members of public vis-a-vis law enforcement officers and obviously intelligence officers.
I shouldn't speak ill of my country, but are we then saying, okay, let me not lump you in onto the, let me say it.
Yes.
Because everything you've said is something that we don't have, literally, because there's a huge gap of mistrust, or should we say there's a lump of it, there's an entire truckload of it.
Yes.
Between starting with people who are in government and the public. Then you go to the security forces, it's the same. The police force, it's the same.
Mm-hmm.
So now, this trust deficit, would you therefore then say that it actually helps exacerbate the situation that we're talking about?
Yes, I would not say it's a huge load of mistrust, but I would say yes, there is that mistrust. Because let me take you to northeastern Kenya.
Yes.
Why do we have terrorists actually killing locals? Do you want to say that someone did not realize? Are they so smart that the locals actually won't know? Some of them come actually unsettled. And so maybe even these Kenyans fear that if they were to relay this information, the terrorists will come after them. That is actually one of the reasons. And with respect to confidence, it is growing. We are getting there. Slowly by slowly, information is being shared, but not as much as the other countries who are way ahead of us.
Justice, I apologize for putting you on the spot.
Yes.
Given what it is you do. That is why I took the burden on myself and said it is I who is saying it.
Yes. Yes.
See,
You are right.
From where I sit, rather from where we sit, this deficit of trust is a terrible thing.
Yes.
To have in a country as a hard currency, because even things that could easily be done become an uphill task.
Yes.
And so even the very process and the very thing that we're now discussing acquire very phenomenally huge features that it need not have. But as you correctly put it, because people do know the criminals in their midst, they do know them.
Yes.
But so long as that deficit exists, they would rather even side with the criminals and not with the law enforcement or the people who are actually there to try and make their lives better. Yes.
They actually they may keep quiet, not necessarily side with them. For instance, when drugs are crossing into the country, either through the ports or through the airport, sometimes you wonder whether someone did not see and keep quiet, or they just feared. Criminal networks are also very dangerous. Terrorists are very dangerous. So as a member of public, you may want to just lie low and find a law enforcement officer you can easily trust to share that information. No, we need to do more, encourage the public, speak to the public that the identities will be protected if this information is shared. And it's happening a lot. It is happening a lot. The administration, of course, the local chiefs, assistant chiefs, even the village elders are sharing information. The government has come up with the Nyumba Kumi initiative, Know Your Neighbor. So that has helped a lot, so that if someone who is suspicious moves into an area, then that information is relayed to the administration.
If we're looking at strengthening of adjudication, Scott, I mean, you sit in it's kind of like a split screen position as a resident advisor for the US DOJ here in Kenya. With that split screen experience, what have you seen that has worked that the DOJ perhaps has used in terms of mechanisms for strengthening that can actually work here? Because that has been one of the problems here. When we look at organized crimes in this part of the world, oftentimes is that how to deal with them has been an issue, because we're looking at cross-border, we're looking at sovereignty, we're looking at so many things at the same time while trying to stop illicit financial flows, stop organized crime. So what would be borrowed lessons that actually are being used as mechanisms for fighting these two?
I think it comes down to just one word, and that's collaboration. We need to be working together. I've heard this discussion that's just taken place, and as I was sitting here, my thoughts go to the fact that we can't forget that organized crime and transnational crime happens in the United States too. We're not immune to it. It starts there, it flows from there, it flows into the United States as well. So we are, if not part of the problem, we're all part of the solution. And the solution comes through collaboration. And how do we do that? We do that through transnational treaties, the UN Treaty on Transnational Organized Crime, that Kenya is a signatory to. We do it through use of what are called mutual legal assistance treaties, which Kenya and the United States are part of. And it all boils down to how do we work together, both law enforcement and the judiciary, as these cases flow through the system. If Judge Mchache can't get evidence in front of her as she's trying to contemplate a case, then she has no ability to rule because she has nothing in front of her. So we need to make sure as lawyers and as prosecutors that we're getting evidence in front of the court that's valid and that has legal sustainability. And those are done through mutual legal assistance treaties. One country helping another country get evidence in that is acceptable to the court.
Has it been harder or easier over time when you speak of collaboration and say between countries? Because one would assume then that there are a number of countries involved when it comes to these treaties, for example. Has it been easier or difficult or more difficult over the years to get these collaborative efforts into play?
I think it's getting easier. It's getting easier through electronics and through digitization. But countries with less accessibility to legal resources, as an example, it makes it more difficult for them to engage in mutual legal assistance. And one of the reasons that the Department of Justice has people like me in different countries is to assist with these mutual legal assistance treaties. We're here as a liaison between Kenya and the United States and other countries to help make sure that as Kenyan prosecutors are trying to work through and get evidence from the United States or other places, that we can lean in where necessary and help. That's our job here.
The fact that you have to have treaties points to the fact that it's been acknowledged that that problem exists between the countries who are signing the treaties, and that in signing the treaties they are perhaps trying to forge a way through which they'll be able to resolve, solve, eliminate, reduce these issues that they're talking about. But when it comes to finances, I find financials tricky in this sense. On the one hand, you have countries that are considered financial safe havens. Okay, and sometimes I'm not certain whether I can actually differentiate between what is fiction and dramatized in movies and what the reality is. The ability of someone to even go into a financial institution and have a safe box where they keep whatever it is, and it isn't something that you bank, so it isn't in the books or the annals of the bank. It's just that is your property, you're the one who has access to it. And then entire institutions who don't question you too much about the monies that you have in their country. Probably that's why they're called safe havens. Now, they exist within countries. Kenya has a sort of treaty that the one you speak of with the country of Switzerland. And the understanding was so that information can be shared if individuals within this country have stashed money that whose origins are at best dubious. The Swiss government is able to share that information with the country. But then, even when we have all these things, that process of actually getting to adjudicate and work on it is slow. very slow. There was a case, I think it was in Nigeria, with the funds of the former late president called Abacha. And I hear from what I understand, the determination was that the money would be returned, but it would be returned to the people, not to the government, meaning it would come in the form of aid or something. Now, how do you navigate the waters so that whatever it is that is intended in the treaties is done expeditiously? I say this is because if it takes a long time, the purpose for which it was intended may actually be defeated.
That's a challenge for all of us. It's a challenge for the United States trying to get information from other countries, and it's certainly a challenge for Kenyan law enforcement trying to get the information. I don't have the answers as how we make it faster, but part of it is through these mutual legal assistance treaties. They do have to be reviewed by law enforcement and the lawyers in the various countries. But we need to move quickly once each country realizes that there's probable cause or reasonable suspicion to believe that money is being held overseas. We need to move more quickly to try to seize that money and secure it for the people from whom it was taken. Do I have an answer how we can make that faster? One of the reasons I think that we can make it faster is through collaboration. The first thing is really, can we do it in a more informal way first? Can we find out whether through, like Interpol as an example, through Interpol communications that are more informal than the treaty-based formal processes, can we find out what is available, what might be available? Then, of course, there's people who come forward. The Panama Papers is an example, right? Where people who were hiding money in, in private bank accounts. Then there's a broader issue. Can the government then put pressure? Can various governments put pressure on another government to change their banking practices to make sure that people don't have the ability to privately hide wealth stolen from people of another country?
What about strengthening the security, investigative, intelligence bodies within a country? Because when I say strengthening, I mean ensuring that they're actually able to do what it is to carry out the mandate that they have. Because if you have a situation where those who are involved in these nefarious activities have more power and more money than those who are supposed to investigate them, then it's a zero-sum game. The likelihood of moving forward is extremely slim. Case in point, and again, this is me saying it. We live in a country where there are many people who are declared millionaires, some even billionaires. It's until recently that I understood to be a billionaire, there needs to be 9 zeros attached to whatever figure. I had gotten around to understanding a million. A billion has taken me a bit of time to understand. The person or these individuals don't have any visible enterprise that you could say produces the value that gives them the wealth, and yet they're wealthy. And many of them are actually government officials. So when this is obvious and you have bodies who are set up specifically to deal with this, unless they are strengthened, they will not go far. They will even point, they will even mention, they will even know. But it gets to a point where you actually cannot prosecute. There's very little that you can do. Yes.
But that's exactly right. I mean, just the other day, the EACC, the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, announced their new 5-year plan and rolled that out here. And I think that's a very laudable addition to what they're already doing, and they are moving forward. But your question reminds me of your parable. It's about integrity first, correct? So what we need to be doing broadly, all of us, is to use the tools that we have that we all know, whether they're in the Bible or whether they're in a law book, to move forward in a way that we all know is the right way.
Okay.
And that's one of the reasons, and I hope we get to talk about it. That's one of the reasons why, starting next week, judges from 16 different countries are coming together in Mombasa to talk about this very issue, to get training, to be able to collaborate, and to work together to find ways to make sure that when people engage in transnational organized crime, they do come into the courts that the judges have what they need to find appropriate
solution. Let's take a break on that point, and at that point, and come back in a short while. And then I will remind you, we'll talk about it a little bit more, that the African Regional Judicial Dialogue on Transnational Organized Crime and Illicit Financial Flows indeed takes place in Kenya from the 3rd to the 5th of October 2023. It will be a dialogue that will focus on the role of courts in the prevention and response to transnational organized crimes and illicit financial flows. It's convened by the Kenya Judiciary Academy and its partners, and it will be officially opened by Chief Justice Martha Koome on Tuesday, October 3rd, and it provides a platform for policy leadership to improve transnational justice. So that will be happening from the 3rd to the 5th. Kenya's biggest conversation joining in that conversation right about now. Let's take a look at weather and traffic, and the conversation continues after this.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Congratulations. You've seen the hand of the Lord.
Thank you very much. I've earned another title today, this morning at Spice FM. Mama Justice, I don't mind it.
Joel in Kericho.
Salama sana Heri, habari ya asubuhi.
Salama bwana, mambo namna gani?
Salama kabisa bro.
Mambo ya Aina Moi kuliendaje?
Mambo ya Aina Moi, vile nilikwambia ndugu yangu, alienda asubuhi na ile gari ya kwanza.
I must have missed it.
So did I.
Even if somebody wants to render you irrelevant, there is still work you can do.
Okay, sawa.
I deserve to keep you accountable. You deserve to give me a report. You don't work for me. I don't work for you. You work for me.
Do you like that Freudian slip? Lovely, isn't it? Thank you very much.
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
All right, so looking at cloudy conditions in Nairobi at 15, we'll see highs of 25 today, coming down to lows of 14. It's sunny at 14 in Nakuru, going to highs of 25. We'll see lows of 13. Mostly cloudy at 16 in Nyeri, highs of 24, and we'll see highs of 24 as well in a sunny Eldoret at 14. 25 and sunny in Mombasa, and 25 and sunny in Malindi, 20. And we're looking at a sunny day in Kisumu, going to highs of 29, and we'll see highs of 28 in Kakamega, where it's currently sunny at 17. Looking into Kampala, partly sunny at 20, highs of 27, and we'll see highs of 30 in a mostly sunny Dar es Salaam at 25. It's 7 and sunny in Johannesburg with highs of 21, and we'll see lows of 26 in a mostly clear Lagos at 27. Kinshasa is cloudy at 24. We'll see highs of 35 and lows of 24.
Spice up your life.
Okay, just when we thought that it would not be so busy this Thursday, there we have it. The TikTok of the clock says we're into traffic hour, and it's heavy on the Thika Superhighway, much heavier than it was about 30 minutes ago. And we're looking at that coming in from the Outer Ring Junction. It's flowing very heavily through towards the Pangani Underpass, out towards Murang'a Road and Wangari Maathai. And that's going to be heavy for some time from what we see. United Nations Avenue, Limuru Road. Coming in on Uhuru Highway, that's going to be busy from the Nyayo Stadium roundabout all the way through to Westlands. So that's one to look out for, moving in a slow pace out towards the city and then towards Westlands. All right, North Airport Road coming in from Cabanas is heavy as well, and it's touching on Outer Ring and going towards the Eastern Bypass. So looks like it will be there for some time. Let's keep our wits about. What's happening in your neck of the woods? Talk to us on Spice FM KE on X.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
About strengthening the adjudication of transnational organized crime as well as illicit financial flows. Kenya, the continent, everywhere. One question about both of these two issues is, who are the victims? When we look at crime we say that they are victims. In this case, are we saying that nations essentially are victims? We're talking about economic crimes. We're talking then about organized crimes, something you talked about, Justice Mochache, of smuggling and terrorism and human trafficking, etc., etc. So countries are victims, isn't it?
Yes.
One would assume then that we would all be chasing our tails to make sure that these loopholes that you talk about are actually tightened. And the treaties that we speak of, and making sure that some of these things then come to book. How then are we able to make sure that certain things that we put in place are actually implemented? And do we see that there is an appetite from country to country? Is there an appetite to implement some of these things that the treaties have mandated by virtue of the fact that countries are signatories to this? Do we see that there's local implementation of some of these mechanisms?
Yes, thank you. Countries are victims, but we have human beings as victims because a country, say the Republic of Kenya, is made up of Kenyans. So whenever an offense is committed against the Republic of Kenya, the people who suffer are human beings. Let's take, for instance, in a case of trafficking in persons. It is actually people who are taken from one country to another country. When we talk about terrorism, as much as buildings are destroyed, some of those buildings are private property, some belong to the country. But within the buildings, within any place where there is an attack, it is actually human beings who die. At Westgate, we lost 67 people. And you could clearly see that the target was not the building itself, it was the people of Kenya. The Dusit attack, as much as it is the hotel that was targeted, but you cannot just blow up a building and get gratification from it as a terrorist. They want to see mass murder. That is how they get gratification. So when you talk about drug trafficking, if you go to Mombasa, for instance, there are young people and families destroyed. People wake up in the morning to just go and buy heroin and take every day. Hopelessness, children have dropped out of school. So the country is affected, but we have real human beings who are suffering. So with respect to trafficking, the country has actually come up with the Counter Trafficking in Persons Act to ensure that these people who traffic humans, women and children, are actually taken to court and charged if they are arrested. And then the victims are taken back to their countries. They're subjected to psychological support. And if they are from, say, Ethiopia or Eritrea, they're sent back home. And if they are Kenyans who have gone abroad, it becomes even more difficult to bring them back, as you have seen. Now, with respect to narcotics, drugs, we have an act. You have seen people arrested, the Psychotropic and Substances Act. When people are arrested, they're taken through the court system. We actually, as the judiciary, insist on the rule of law. We are not a jungle republic. As much as these people commit heinous crimes, they are taken through the judicial system, and actually their rights are observed. We have also the Prevention of Terrorism Act, which deals with people who commit terrorism and terrorism-related offenses. Corruption as well, we have the Economics and Crimes Act. And in fact, the country has done much more than that. We have a special court which handles corruption in this country, right from the magistracy to the High Court. It is not contaminated. Every morning they wake up, they go to court handling nothing but economic crimes. With reference to terrorism, we have Shanzu law courts and Kahawa law courts. Right. The magistrates posted to those courts wake up in the morning to handle nothing but terrorism and transnational organized crimes. Like Kahawa law courts is situated within Committee Prison. I am actually the judge that has supervisory jurisdiction over that court, as well as Jomo Kenyatta International Court, which deals with the drug trafficking cases only. So the judiciary has, as a country, and through the judiciary, the Chief Justice has designated magistrates and judges to handle those special crimes. With respect to wildlife trafficking, these cases again go to Kahawa law courts as well as Shanzu law courts. So there are acts of parliament, there are magistrates who have been trained and judges, and also specific prosecutors who prosecute in those cases.
Right.
Yes.
Scott, one would assume that because there are treaties and that there are sovereign states who come together to form these treaties, the assumption is that everybody's having a kumbaya moment and everybody's then very happy about the things that we discuss when it comes to agreements or cooperation when it comes to some of these crimes. Illicit financial flows comes front and center with this. But is it the case that everybody is in agreement in terms of what needs to happen when it comes to adjudication? If somebody, for example, is arrested in Kenya and is a foreign national, is that person then subjected to the laws of Kenya? Or is there an agreement that says this person may then be repatriated to their country to then face the law there? One would assume that because of a treaty that is in place, that it doesn't matter where you might be apprehended, that you would then face the arm of the law in that country. Is that the case, and should it not be?
Of course, each nation is a sovereign state. So if a person commits a crime here in Kenya that originates in another country, they can be prosecuted in both countries. If they're doing acts here in Kenya, they should be, in my opinion, prosecuted here in Kenya. Then, after they serve their sentence and punishment here, they should be returned to wherever their country is. And if they've committed a crime there, then that country should also be looking to see whether they should be prosecuted in that country for their criminal acts there.
An interesting thing you say, because we've had a case of the Akasha brothers who were repatriated to the U.S. Their crime was drug trafficking, and their drug trafficking was here. So explain to me, what sort of legal jurisdiction is that where someone commits a crime here? Is this what you're trying to say, that the crime is committed here but it affects people in a different jurisdiction? So is this where now the treaties come in?
So I don't know the facts of that case that you're mentioning.
Yes.
But if criminal activity is taking place in one country, but the flow of illicit drugs goes to the United States, they've committed a crime in the United States or any other country where those drugs have flowed. If that country seeks to prosecute and goes first, in essence, through extradition treaties and other manners, those individuals would be moved to the country in which a crime was committed in that country. But that's not to say that after they've been convicted or charged there, that they can't be returned here to Kenya to be charged again with criminal activity here.
A bit tricky, because if the sentence is a life sentence, I mean, the only time you can come back to that country is in the afterlife. So...
Understood.
It wasn't a life sentence, actually. It was 25
wasn't.
years.
No, it wasn't. I'm just mentioning that if it is a life sentence, then clearly, yes, it was 25 years.
Yes.
I mean, Justice Mochacha, maybe you can give some light to that as well. Because here we are talking about, are we saying that it is a level playing field for all countries that are in these agreements? Because then where does the conversation come in about this is our national who may have committed a crime, bring them back here and let us try them at home? Are there superiority levels within these treaties? Are there superiority levels between these agreements when we talk about strengthening adjudication? Does one country's sovereignty outrank another?
Yeah, not necessarily. We have treaties, extradition and contiguous treaties, Cap 76 and 77. So extradition is allowed if countries have signed the extradition treaty. Where there is no extradition treaty, countries can enter into an MOU.
Okay.
In which case then the Attorney General receives a request to extradite. Remember, we are talking about transnational organized crimes. The drugs leaving Kenya may have had a greater effect in the US, or drugs leaving South Africa may have had a greater effect to Kenyans. And therefore, Kenya can make a request to South Africa to have a person who has committed those crimes extradited to be tried in Kenya. That is what happened with the Akasha brothers. An MOU is generated. A request first comes to the Attorney General, then they generate a a memorandum of understanding specifically that the offense the person is going to face in the other country must be an offense in this country, and the person should not be subjected to, a punishment that Kenya would not generally subject a person to. Yeah, but superiority, there are some countries I know who may not have signed certain treaties. They actually decide that their citizens will not be tried abroad if they are arrested. Yes, one of them is the US actually. Yes, but that is the US. As for Kenya, as with Kenya, we have signed quite a number of treaties and they come in handy. But remembering also that we are the ones who actually experiencing most of the wrath actually of these crimes. For instance, terrorism. Terrorists have hit Kenya more than any other country, of course, within the region. So we actually would like to cooperate with other countries. Even if they are not cooperating, maybe they are slightly at a higher level. We do not know. They are more advanced. They know how to tackle those crimes. But as we prefer to collaborate with those other countries. Yeah.
Scott, this training that you speak of, tell us about how it is that it is going to meld into what we're discussing here.
Yeah, great. One of the things that, one of the roles that we have here, we meaning I have a partner here, Jody Young, who is another resident legal advisor. Our job here is to really assist. We're not here as prosecutors in Kenya. We're here to assist the judiciary with training. We're here to assist the ODPP with training and any other assistance that we can offer, as well as doing the work that I mentioned earlier, helping in transnational organized crime as a liaison between the United States and Kenya. In this particular case, the Kenyan Judicial Academy saw a need. And what they saw was a need to bring judges from across Africa together to talk about transnational organized crime and illicit financial flows. Judges I can say this as a lawyer, I know that judges have a really hard job. I can prepare a case for years and be ready to walk into court and present my case. And my job is to convince this judge that my case is worthy and deserves, as a prosecutor, a conviction. My case may be take an hour in her courtroom, and then another lawyer comes in who's prepared for hours on a different matter with a completely different subject, comes in and does the same thing. So judges have a hard job. They need to know a lot about everything. It's not just a wide and shallow river. They need to be wide and deep. And so this conference is intended to, the JKA has, in their wisdom, has said, let's bring people together to, one, talk about the issue, first of all, sensitize judges to the issues of transnational organized crime broadly, and then share experiences with how we can work better together across Africa to assist each other as judges in transnational organized crime proceedings.
I'm interested to hear what may have been seen as mechanisms that would. All right, let me ask questions differently. Have we seen over time a reduction or increase in transnational organized crime? Illicit financial flows have been kind of like on the back burner, but they're happening all over the place all the time. But have we seen a reduction in these crimes, transnational organized crime? And have we seen anything that has set as have we seen anything that has been set to stop these crimes from happening based on any kind of action that has been taken judiciously to stop them?
Yes. Reduction, I do not have the statistics, but let's just look at corruption cases at Milimani and Corruption Court. You have seen quite a number of people losing property. Applications have been made, property has been frozen, it has been seized and forfeited to the state. At least that is in the public domain. So then I don't know whether corruption is going down or whether it's still at the same level, but corruption still does exist. Remember, these are criminals who keep on imagining that they're way ahead of law enforcement officers. So as one loophole is closed, one gap is closed, they become innovative. We say they're very innovative. So you'll keep on finding new ways of how the money is flowing out and in of the country. Illicit money may come even through importation of cars. You just find someone has a car bazaar and people are paying cash. So you see, it is very hard to track that kind of money, isn't it? When someone comes and pays for a vehicle cash, the Financial Reporting Center, the FRC, that's the Financial Intelligence Unit, may not be able to pick that kind of transaction. So from the judiciary perspective, I think, yes, we are doing very well. Magistrates and judges have been trained. We are actually training jointly with the intelligence officers, prosecutors, and anti-terror police unit, as well as officers dealing with corruption, so that we try and understand where the gaps are. Sometimes we are blamed as the judiciary for acquitting criminals, and yet there is evidence. But if the evidence is not presented well, then as a judicial officer, the threshold is beyond reasonable doubt. If there are doubts, this criminal will just have to go. And if you have violated the rights of that criminal again, we will not countenance that. So I think there has been a reduction, and we are actually sensitized enough, and that is why we are going for this regional training. As a region, we want to see how we can customize our problems, our jurisprudence. What is emerging in Uganda that we could actually learn from them? What jurisprudence has emerged from, say, Ethiopia or Mozambique or Zambia that we could actually borrow from them? How are the judicial officers, law enforcement officers, as well as intelligence officers collaborating so as to defeat this monster called transnational organized crime? Overall, I would think, having sat at Kahawa law courts, having sat at Shanzu law courts, which handle transnational organized crimes, that we are doing very well as a judiciary. We have seen lots of people convicted for terrorism. Milimani Anti-Corruption Court is rendering super decisions. You have seen some of the judges refusing withdrawal of high-profile corruption cases. So I think we are on the right track, and with continuous training. And like at the regional training, experts are going to come in. They're going to talk to us how best we can improve. We are going to share how best we can collaborate with other countries in the fight against transnational organized crimes.
Okay, winding down the hour, but even as we look at this dialogue taking place next week, what can we hope to see thereafter, whether it's at the court level, whether it's at the crime investigative level? What can we hope to see?
Well, I think I know that what we're going to see is we're going to see judges from 16 or 17 nations go back to their countries with more skills, more resources, and more contacts amongst their peers to know how to address these cases. And with that sort of knowledge, it can only improve the ability of each judiciary to address transnational organized crime. And that's not only the goal, but I'm confident that will be the result.
I think we're going to get judicial officers and judges who are champions in the fight against corruption, transnational organized crimes generally. We're going to see judicial officers and judges who have passion. And when they go to court, they know that these crimes actually lead to political instability. They drain the economy of the country. Judges and judges who understand what they're supposed to do. And of course, collaboration. Now we can be able to share information. We can be able to, chat through social media and what have you, so that we are able as a region to unite in the fight against transnational organized crime. Yes.
All right, that dialogue takes place on October 3rd to 5th in Mombasa, and that happens next week. And it'll be interesting to see the proceeds, essentially, from this. Honorable Justice Diana Mochache, a judge of the High Court of Kenya, and Scott Afshag, thank you so much for being here. Scott is the US DOJ resident legal advisor in Nairobi. Thanks for having this conversation with us this hour. Important ones to have, and it will be interesting to see how this opens up in the future. Again, as you said, corruption, international crime, things that take place around the world but affect the citizens of a country then need to be dealt with essentially with a hard hand. And seeing African countries come together and seeing ways in which they can work together to put and stamp this out is definitely one worth having. Thank you once again for being in the Situation Room this morning.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for having us.
The conversations continue after this. It's 8 o'clock.
Spice up your life.
Good morning. This is Newsline. I'm Dennis Aseto. The State Department of Social Protection and Senior Citizen Affairs has launched the Community Development Management Information System in Nairobi. This is in line with the Presidential Directive to automate and onboard all government services on e-Citizen. CDMIS is a game changer encompassing three crucial programs, namely economic inclusion that will ensure economic opportunities for the marginalized through automation, delivering benefits promptly and efficiently. Similarly, volunteerism, which fosters strong and resilient communities by simplifying volunteer matching and management. For decades, Kilifi County has been struggling with numerous challenges in the education sector, ranging from high poverty levels, lack of access to information and resources, poor infrastructure, and shortage of teachers. This narrative is, however, slowly fading away thanks to the digital transformation of a Kilifi school that has revolutionized the unlocked tremendous potential for learners, reshaping the way education is delivered, accessed, and experienced. The Learning Hub School, located at the Tenga area on the outskirts of Malindi, is likely to have been introduced to Century Tech. This online platform uses artificial intelligence to teach and gauge the performance of the children individually, which makes a positive impact on learners. Now, the Kenya Institute of Special Education is urging East Africa community nations to increase funding for special needs institutions to ensure more learners benefit. KISE Director Norman Kiogora said adequate funding for special needs schools will see the institutions acquire modern equipment and facilities and make learning enjoyable for learners with special needs. Kiogora observed that the Kenyan government has formulated laws supporting the accessibility of education to all learners and called on the East African community partner states to emulate Kenya. He spoke during a tour of Ugandan delegation of education stakeholders who are in the country for a benchmarking tour. The Ugandan delegation is set to visit more education institutions in Machakos and Nakuru counties. The family of a 30-year-old teacher who was stabbed by her estranged boyfriend is appealing for justice after the suspect was arrested and later released on police bond. Elizabeth Bana, a mother of two who was stabbed 3 times, is now fighting for life at Aga Khan Hospital's intensive care unit in Mombasa. The suspect reportedly called the teacher to resolve their misunderstanding before he stabbed her after attempts to reconcile failed. The duo had an altercation inside the suspect's vehicle in Changamwe at a recreational area. As she was fleeing, he stabbed her in the back, leaving her to bleed profusely before she was rescued by Good Samaritans and rushed to the nearby Port Reitz Hospital. And a neighbor who was testifying in the Maxine Wahome's murder case told the court that Asad Khan was always violent to his numerous ex-girlfriends. According to Chemutai Korir, Khan had shouted at Wahome on the fateful day while insulting her to get out of his house. She recalled that on that day, there were terrifying sounds that were coming from Assad's apartment, which was above hers. Korir said it was not the first time they were fighting, as it was common occurrence, with the last incident being more intense. Kenya has singled out the enactment of the Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substance Control Act of 1994 and reviewed in 2022 that prohibits the cultivation of certain plants, including cannabis, as one of key achievements made in the fight against drug abuse in the country. This was revealed during the ongoing 31st Heads of National Drug Law Enforcement Agencies in Africa in Abuja, Nigeria. Kenya is represented by the Ministry of Interior and the National Administration, the National Authority for the Campaign Against Alcohol and Drug Abuse (NACADA), Pharmacy and Poisons Board, and the Financial Reporting Center. Kenya's head of delegation, Beverly Opora, who is also the Secretary for the National Administration in the State Department for Internal Security, observed that regular surveillance and destruction of illicit plants, as well as bringing to book persons involved in illicit cultivation, is some of the strategies being implemented by the government to firmly deal with the challenge of illicit cultivation in the country. And Kenya Power has announced that there will be power interruptions in 8 counties today. The counties are Nairobi, Kilifi, Trans Nzoia, West Pokot, Kisumu, Migori, Embu, Isiolo and Kiambu. The interruptions will happen at diverse times of the day and in specific areas. Parts of Nairobi to have interruptions include Muthaiga Road, Muthaiga Crescent, Naivasha Avenue, Chui, Serengeti, Matundu Road, Moapak, Gertrude Hospital, Saika, Umoja 3, parts of Kangundu Road, Obama, KPCU, Silanga, Slaughterhouse, Maile Samba and Kayole Junction, among others. This is Newsline. I'm Dennis Asato. Good morning.
.5 Spice FM, Kisumu.
It's critical that people pay taxes. But then taxation has to have a limit. When you start overtaxing people beyond certain limit, then this is now we call robbery with violence.
We are all struggling, but we don't show. If you're not doing well, shame on you. But you have to say, I'm broke and I'm struggling. We are not okay until everybody is okay.
We are pretending to have political parties. Why don't we just be honest? And we say, these are the Luyas, these are the Kambas, these are the Kikuyus, and we find ourselves in Kenya.
You know, with politics and leadership, no matter what you do, there will always be a complaint. There will always be the assumption that you're either stealing or you're not doing things right. As a leader, don't fear. If you know you're doing the right thing, you've thought about it, you've got an expert advice, do it, then understand later.
This country, we don't need prayers. Prayers is between you and God. Good governance and thinkers who care about the country and not their stomach.
That's what we need. The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
All right, so looking at a few minutes after 8 o'clock, and we're looking at a busy morning still on the roads, coming off a Thika Superhighway. It's busy then coming into the city. And on Uhuru Highway, getting past the Nyeri Stadium roundabout, out towards Haile Selassie, that's going to be busy for some time. We're looking at some traffic coming out of Westlands. On the Thika Superhighway, that hasn't stopped really much. There's some then coming through at Survey, at the underpass. There's also some movement coming out of Westlands as well. But I think this is manageable at this point. It'll get us through the morning without too much of a headache. Let's talk either way. Spice FM KE on X and keep things moving this morning.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room,
8
the
minutes
only
after
way
8
to
o'clock.
start
We're
your
into the third
day.
hour of Kenya's biggest conversation this morning. And as we get into it, our guests for the hour are seated. It's full house this hour, and we're looking at a very important topic. And this morning I said to myself, this is something that's very dear to me when I think about it, and I say there should be no wastage, especially when we are looking at those who do not have. The International Day of Awareness on Food Loss and Waste is a conversation that we're having this hour, and our guests are in the studio already seated. By way of introduction, Professor Jane Ambuko is a professor of horticulture at the University of Nairobi, Kenya. Winnie Yegon is the food systems analyst for the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, that's FAO, and Dr. Christopher Mutungi is a senior researcher at Food Program World Resources Institute. They are here this morning, and as we get into it, we're going to welcome you all with today's proverb before we hear your voices.
Our proverbs for the whole of this week and in tomorrow are from a country you have heard of. Some of you have even visited it. It's in East Africa. It's called Kenya. Right. How easy it is to defeat people who don't kindle the fire for themselves. That's the proverb for the day. What we said at the beginning of the week is that we will not state where the proverbs are from in terms of which part of the country. But we ask our listeners and those like you wonderful people who are in the show to try and determine whether the communities you come from have similar proverbs. If they don't, well, maybe they'll have a proverb similar to the one that we will hear tomorrow.
Tomorrow?
Tomorrow.
Dr. Christopher Mutungi, good morning.
Good morning, too.
Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Professor Jane Ambuko, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Winnie, good morning.
Good morning.
Karibuni sana to this conversation. Let's repeat that again. I'd like to hear from each of you what you think about this proverb.
Okay. How easy it is to defeat people who don't kindle the fire for themselves.
Prof, we start with you.
Okay, to defeat people who don't kindle.
The fire for themselves, yes.
To defeat, okay.
It's easy to defeat people who don't kindle the fire for themselves.
Okay, so what do you want me to say?
It is how it resonates with you. This is one of those situations where you can't be wrong. Even if you try.
Okay.
Because it is your own opinion.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, so if they can't kindle the fire for themselves, it basically means somebody has to do it for them. Right. So they are basically at the mercies of the one who kindles the fire.
See?
Something like that.
It's painless.
Jonesing for points. What about you, Winnie?
I think first they don't even realize there's a fire. So they're probably burning. If you can't kindle your own fire, there's probably something wrong. If you can't realize you're burning, that you need to wait for someone else to come and stop the fire.
Okay, so there's people protecting their fire. There are those who don't realize they're burning. Dr. Mutungi, what do you think about this proverb?
I think the Proverbs speaks to the fact that people should always have a solution for themselves. I mean, you cannot just sit and expect other people to do everything for you. And therefore, it requires that people have a way of sorting their own issues. That's the way I see it.
Voila. Santa Claus?
You know, on a scale of 1 to 10, we like to give an assessment, though this isn't an exam. So on a scale of 1 to 10, all of you have scored 11. And the reason is because you've given us your opinion, and then you've added just a little bit more explaining it. But everything you've said, some of what you've said resonates with what we have spoken of here. Some of it we're hearing for the first time, so it's good.
Okay, well, I guess it's a good day because everybody gets overachievers already, and this is where we are. So we're looking at a day today, or rather, we're looking at a day. We'll tell us exactly when that day is, but and looking at food loss and waste. So when we talk about food loss and waste, the importance of it or the importance of addressing it, Winnie, maybe we can start off with you. Some, very clear definitions here. When we talk about food loss and waste, what exactly are we saying? Does that mean that I have a plate and I don't eat it all and I throw it in the dustbin, or what are we talking about when we talk about food loss?
So thank you for your question. So when you talk about food loss and waste, we are referring to food that was intended for human consumption that ultimately isn't consumed. So the difference between food loss and waste is where it occurs in what we call the value chain. So we are looking at all the actions from the farm right up to disposal of the food. So from the farm to where we have the retailers, we call that food loss, and then from retail to the consumer level, that is what we call food waste. So when you talk of food loss and waste, when we are discussing issues around food and nutrition security, we are always thinking of producing the food. How do we get to increase our production and our productivity? However, now when we flip the tables, we are looking at what do we do with the food that we have produced? And that is where the conversation around food loss and waste comes in, because we are talking about 30 to 40% for Kenya, food loss and waste. And this is food that, we have spent resources, we have put in money, we have put in time, we have put in investments to ensure that we are producing the food. But food loss and waste, it directly takes out from what we are producing, and it doesn't have any benefit to anyone, because, when we are losing the food, we have different ways of how we want to address it. But if we are just to take food loss and waste as it is, then it's food that is just going, nowhere. It's going, it's detrimental to the environment because it's food that is not being consumed.
30 to 40% of the food that Kenya produces goes to waste and loss. Dr. Mutungi?
Yeah, those are the statistics for now. And one has to see this loss from different angles, really. I mean, if you're losing 30% and agriculture contributes 33% of our GDP, then that means you are actually almost getting over with 10% of your GDP. So it's really massive.
Huge.
It's huge.
Yeah. It really is. And if we're looking at that loss vis-a-vis the number of people who are going hungry. Okay, let's look at the last 10 years where we had the most severe droughts in Kenya as an example, where people were going hungry and there was rations and there was food aid that was being given out. But we're saying that food is going to waste. We're losing it. So help me to understand, Professor, when we say that food has been obviously we've gotten that definition from Winnie, but we're saying that it's been produced, it should be for consumption. Where are the breaks here that then doesn't allow this food to get from where it has been produced to the people who obviously need it? And then we still are saying that there's a situation whereby the state is depressed because people cannot eat.
Right. So thank you, Andrew, for your question. Yeah. So like Winnie and Chris have already said, you see, we produce food enough. And you can bear me witness that actually our farmers work so hard to produce food. But the leaks are everywhere. That 30% or 40% statistic cuts across. Some food is lost at the farm. Some is lost during transport. Some all the way. So at every stage of the supply chain, there's some concession, some loss happens. And so, like Chris said, these losses, they translate into, I think we look at it as just food has gone to waste, but it's all the effort, the resources that have gone into producing that food. Picture a farmer who's produced, I'm a horticulturist, so I'll talk about horticulture. I don't know if you've seen sometimes on TV, they show images